Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Thanks for joining me this week. My guest today is Jamie Kucinski. He's the drummer and founding member of the band XIII Minutes. He also does concert event planning and promoting in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. And now he's the founder of a new project, the Kardia Complex. I'm going to let him tell you more about it. Jamie, we know each other, but we don't know each other.
True.
So we have to start from square one. But I saw this news on social media this morning, and I was like, I got to go find out what's happening. So here we are.
Yeah, I figure, well, I've already had some questions come my way, and I'm sure I'm going to field a lot more questions. It's always interesting when things like this happen. Never ideal, always interesting, but it happens.
Okay, growing pains.
Yes.
You're with 13 Minutes. All of a sudden, COVID hits, and now you start rethinking everything. And tell us about, is it Kardia Complex?
Kardia Complex, yes. Well, where would you like me to start?
From the beginning. It sounds like you've had this stewing around in your head for a while.
Oh, gosh, yes. Well, you know, it's interesting how inspiration can build up over time. I think for me, I'd have to take you all the way back to 2007. I'm sitting there in a concert with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I've heard a lot of things about TSO, so me and my wife, we decided to go out and check out what all the hype was about. Mm-hmm. So from there, I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Been pretty remiss to listen to much in the way of classical style music, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, but this performance, if you will, really inspired me to go out and maybe put down my prejudices a little bit after witnessing what heavy metal musicians can do with a genre that is not normally their MO, if you will. Mm-hmm. But then I also witnessed something really unique that I was not expecting, and it was their Christmas story, which TSO is pretty famous for. Mm-hmm. And so I was sitting there listening to this story, and the most striking thing for me was presently absent was the story of Santa Claus. The TSO story was that of God. Mm-hmm. And here I was in this arena with 10,000 other people, and they were talking about God. Very non-traditional way of doing it, but it wasn't quiet. You know, some people try to go really covert. And then, oh, by the way, but in this case, they were pretty forthright about the kind of Christmas story they were telling. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. This is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. You have 10,000 people, and I'm going to assure you most of them, or a good percentage of them, were not believers. You know, and nobody's in here getting offended. This doesn't seem contrived. It just seems like a great story, but it is very God-centered. And I walked out going, wow, that was amazing. It stuck with me and started really kind of hammering out some of my disappointments with traditional church worship.
Okay.
My mom was an old hippie. Some of my fondest memories of my mom, and I don't have a lot of them, but she would break out her acoustic guitar and she would sing things like, Here Comes the Sun, mm-hmm. and You Are My Sunshine. And I don't have many good memories of my mom, but when music was present, the good memories were too. And that was my upbringing. So there was a strong, deep personal connection with genres, time frames. So I come to church, and then my initial leanings in church were, hey, you've met Jesus. By the way, everything you listen to is satanic. You need to get rid of it. I'm like, wait a minute. I got so many good memories from this. What do you mean it's satanic? And I reconciled that. And then, of course, there was not really a lot of great church music. I remember everything kind of sounding like singing a Willy Wonka song. Oompa, loompa, oompa. You know, Jehovah Jireh, just put that over the Oompa Loompa theme. And then you have kind of what church worship was when I found my way into church culture. And there was always a bothersome trait about that for me. And then, of course, this is just me personally, not everybody. But then I remember this thing that we would be handed this music and was always the Christian alternative to such and such.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this are going to really feel what I'm saying here. And that always bothered me, especially as I got further along with my walk with Christ. Like, why are we the alternative?
Mm-hmm.
My God says that we're the head, not the tail. Why are we the alternative? There's no originality. All this started feeding into me. Now, long story short, I walked away from the church for a while. And then through a series of, I would believe to be God-ordained events, I found myself face down at the feet of Jesus and with no really other choice in life but to surrender. And those early religious leanings, though, they carried with me into my next journey, and I never could shake them. So that's why the TSO concert was so important to me, as this was really the first time I saw this on full display. They were not proselytizing, so it wasn't pretentious, and it really, really struck me. And I carried it with me. I thought about it. I'm like, wow, what if I could do something like that? Fast forward a few years, and I'm starting to attend here in Tulsa at a place called Church on the Move. And we have an amazing, amazing worship pastor that you may have heard of from the group For Him, named Andy Chrisman.
Andy, I remember him.
Yes. Now,
what a lovely voice he has.
Oh, my goodness, Cindy. So, I'm
assuming it's as good as it was back when I heard him sing live before.
Probably better, because he's got now that mature, raspy.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, but life would have it. I love how God directs your footsteps. And sometimes he's leading you to a place you don't even realize. But I found myself into this quote-unquote mega church here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, I avoided mega churches like the plague. Once again, prejudices and stereotypes. I had them. We all do. I try to really be obedient to where I believe the Holy Spirit is leading me. And, of course, my wife is a great litmus to it. And we both felt like this is the place we need to go. And so I'm sitting in service week in and week out listening to Andy Chrisman sing. And he started singing these songs like I'd never heard him before. And I'm like, my gosh, much like when I was at the TSO show, I'm like, I got to go check this out. And I realized he was singing stuff like Hillsong. I'm not going to be a self-professed Hillsong fan, but Andy allowed me to be in a posture where I let my prejudices down a little bit. Long-held views about what is regarding stuff like Hillsong or CCM music, as you might hear a lot of the prejudices, especially within the metal community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking out week in and week out just absolutely inspired by this man and the way he delivers these songs. And so I start listening to him more and finding a greater depth and of appreciation for him. And then I find myself in a club here in Tulsa, as it was called the Eclipse at that point, back in 2013. Now, this was pretty interesting for me because this was a club I'd played many, many years before as a young guy trying to forge out a rock and roll career. And so I'm bringing now my young 7-year-old son with me to see Sleeping Giant in this dingy club in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So there's probably about 250 people packed shoulder to shoulder, more tattoos and piercings in one place than you've ever seen in your life, I think. Well, maybe not you. But
that might be true. Okay.
And so I'm sitting there at the close of the Sleeping Giant show, and they finish out their set with "Oh, Praise Him," and then I have decided to follow Jesus. And so we're sitting in this dirty little club in downtown Tulsa with arms raised, just worshiping Christ. For me, it was just an amazing spectacle to behold, watching all these fringe culture people with their eyes closed and their arms raised. And without pretense. Once again, this was a very organic moment. And again, walked away, wheels are turning. I'm like, gosh, what if we could do this together? Show the excellence and creativity of God without pretense. Take it outside of the church walls and deliver these words with excellence and watch what God does. And so this was the burning question on my soul for a long time. And it's a big, grand idea that I've learned that a lot of people cannot wrap their mind around with me. So I would set it aside and set it aside and set it aside. And for whatever reason, this year, the conviction to move began to really, really well up in me. And I argued, I'm not going to lie, I'm like, well, we just released a great album and we're just getting started, and I don't have time to go with both pursuits with excellence the way I go. Obviously, anybody that knows me knows I don't do anything halfway.
And so I've noticed that about you.
Right. Well, I'm arguing with God is like, I only have a little bit of time to devote. I try to really adhere to Psalm 37:4 when God tells us to delight ourselves in Him, and He'll give us the desires of our heart. And so I've been asking God, how can I balance this? 2 projects, family, job, parenthood. I'm only one person. And God was saying, Jamie, it's time to set something else down. But I don't want to do that, God. We just got started. And He really didn't give me much of an option. Things began to transpire that really caused me to reflect on the journey and if it was time to really put it down. And the big one for me, and I think God knew this, was the resignation of my co-founder and best friend, Aaron Smith, earlier this year. And my stubborn self said, you know what, Jamie, just put another guitarist in there. And so I tried. and it just wasn't the same. Aaron wasn't just a guitarist. Aaron was, he was my co-founder. He was my brother. He was my visionary. He was the guy that, rolled up his sleeves along with me when, nobody else was paying attention and put all this together. So his loss really deeply impacted me. And of course, I'm kind of the last man standing of all the guys that really formed this thing. And I'm like, this is kind of a lonely place to be. I mean,
yeah.
And so I started praying. I'm like, God, is it time? And I've asked that before, but this time it was different. And this time it was, yes, it's time. But people are going to be upset with me. People are going to be angry. People are not going to understand. Then that reminder that He's going to go before us and take care of what needs to be done. Our role is not to create excuses, but to practice obedience. And so here I am, I'm not going to do it halfway. So here I am going all in.
Backstage with Mothership returns after this. Outperformance Shop is a proud supporter of Solid Rock Radio. They specialize in retail and wholesale of automotive high-performance racing and off-road products. They also carry a variety of accessories from remote control cars to rock and roller multi-carts. On the web at outperformance.com.
And we're back with Jamie Kucinski of the Kardia Complex.
After speaking with you, I can see that you really have a passion for this. And you really have a heart for God, too. God opens a door and He shuts another, kind of a thing.
Right.
I mean, it reminds me of I don't know how I got where I am. It just seems like God opens a door and I keep stumbling through them. And one thing leads to another, and you kind of start looking back over your shoulder and you're going, how did this even happen? How did I get here? Things keep happening. And it's like, okay, as long as things keep happening and it's in what my wheelhouse is and what I feel God called me to do, which is to minister to musicianaries, and give it a go. Why not, right?
I sometimes feel like Moses when he was talking to God, and God said, well, I hear your excuse and I raise you an Aaron. And I could find all the excuses in the world to talk myself out of this. And the big thing is I care about the guys that I've worked with deeply. And I know they're going to be supportive, but there's going to be a somewhat of a letdown. It's a change and sometimes feels a little selfish, but I don't know. I think my final musical journey really felt like worship. And not worship in the traditional sense, but just allowing it to be on a communal display, not really to glorify myself, but I'm always reminded how David went out in the public square, of course, danced out of his clothes. I'm not going to do that. But, right? Nobody wants to see that. It was, I'm going to worship, and I don't really care who's watching. And maybe you join me, maybe you won't. I don't know. I feel like there is life-giving words that we get to celebrate and take part in with regularity within the church walls. That we, especially as a metal culture, we chase after the major labels and the worldly success. We diminish what the family brings, if you will. Mm-hmm. And not everybody. So this is not a blanket statement to everybody. It's just been my experiences. A lot of us are trying to get out of the family or disconnect ourselves from the family. And so we can get XYZ contract or XYZ stage. And I've been there. I was there. I really still have a massive aversion to marketing myself as a quote unquote Christian artist. And I don't do it because I'm trying to get the worldly success, but I feel like Christian for me is a lifestyle, not a marketing tag. So
I like that.
Yeah, it's not that I have an aversion to showing my faith. I believe that God is the Alpha and the Omega. I feel like when we go out, we're not the alternative. We are the head. And then when we get into the worldly markets, if you will, we don't need to duck and run. What we need to do is show this great, amazing creativity of the great artist himself within our lives, then practice and emanate the love that he mandates us to, and get ourselves out of the way a little bit, and then watch what the Holy Spirit does. That is my hope, Cindy. I hope I can do that. I'm maybe making this bigger than it is, but I feel very inferior when it comes to this idea, which is probably why I sidestepped it for so long, but it just got too loud for me. I had to move.
Please tell me that you and T.D. Benton have talked from
it is
Sideshow.
So funny that you mentioned that. I had a 2-hour conversation with TD the other day. And
well, there you go.
He's been a confidant and a great friend of mine for many years now. And I figure who better to call than the guy who, moved from the drummer throne into the front and created this crazy idea to tell a story in a very unique and innovative way. And so we did have a long conversation about how he made that transition, because I'm facing a lot of the same things. I've honestly, for my career, felt inferior. You've heard the term, he's just a drummer. Mm-hmm. I don't sing. I don't play guitar. So the question is, okay, Jamie, then how are you going to do this? Well, you know what? God has fostered a lot of great relationships in my path over the years, and a lot of it is going to be collaboration and connection.
So I want you to clarify what this means for 13 minutes, and then give us a clarification of what Kardia complex is in your brain right now. Of course, I know it may change.
It's developing for sure, but 13 minutes, I'm going to echo the words of Corey Taylor from Slipknot Stone Sour fame. He just came out on record saying Stone Sour is on an indefinite hiatus. I'll never say never. The thing about saying never is there's a finality that you may have to go eat later. I love these guys. I wouldn't hesitate to share a stage with them again in the future. I just know I don't have the energy to put into the product that I have for the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And it would be unfair to the people who have come and gone through this project to become a shell of what we're supposed to be. So for me, the easiest thing to do is say, it's a hiatus. You guys got art in you. I got art in me. Perhaps maybe one day later, we'll all come back around.
Okay.
But today,
the door is closed.
The door is closed. For Kardia Complex, I am already in the studio. I have been in the studio for the last few weeks with Larry Worley of Fear Not. He is going to be one of my partners on my initial single, my inaugural single. Funny thing about working with Larry is that all that early church leaning that I told you about, Larry was one of those voices that actually gave me hope that music could be okay. I'm showing my age here now, but I wore Fear Not's album out. And then, maybe a year and a half ago, I get a message from Larry going, hey, I'm a worship pastor over here in Broken Arrow. I've been paying attention to what you in 13 Minutes are doing. Would you like to come play drums over here? Trying to be all cool and stuff. Like, well, Larry, let me think about it. But then I got home, talked to my wife. I'm like, Shalima, do you know who contacted me today? And I was so people
fangirling.
Oh, I was. I'm such a fan of people. And before I was ever in a band, I was a fan, and I'm still a fan. So I have no shame. And I'm so thrilled and so honored that I get to work with a guy who was really, really pivotal in my music journey, gave me inspiration and encouragement long before he ever knew my name. We're working together to build this first single. The idea and the concept really is this. Without giving too much away, I'll just say that I'm choosing song selections right now that the idea is, did this cause me to stop in my tracks and look up to God? Did it stop me cold and cause me to rethink my life a little bit? My hope is to do a lot like TSO did and weave a story into my album. It's not meant for evangelizing. It's not really meant for proselytizing. It's showcase what I hope people will see as intelligent art. and maybe look at songs in a new way.
Well, this is exciting, and I'm glad to kind of be on the ground floor and knowing what's happening.
Well, I might add that these are all going to have hard rock leanings. Got to have my foundation here. I don't want to release another CCM album. I don't want to do anything like that. I want to take a lot like what TSO did with classical music and reintroduce it.
Okay. When and if the road opens up for everybody, what does that look like for you?
Well, at first, I'm starting with baby steps. Like I told you a while ago, I've introduced this idea several times over through the course of the last 12 years, only to be met in a lot of ways with blank stares. And so I'm being patient right now to really put it down in the studio. And I think when I get that first song finally presented in the way that I hear it in my head, people will begin to understand what I'm going for. And when I do that, then, of course, I can see who has an interest of getting on the road with it. And I want to pull out all the bells and whistles that I can, really put a lot of critical thought into what we do on the stage. It'll be rock and roll, but it'll be a little different.
Okay. So when you're writing, are you considering possibly writing for other people?
Well, I'm letting a lot of people write for me, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And again, I'm very self-aware, Cindy. I know where my deficiencies are. I've considered a lot of these various aspects where I need people to fill in for me. And it is a partnership. I'm the brainchild, but I've made a living over the years not being the smartest person. But I also am very keenly aware of my opportunity areas. And I really do welcome other people's strengths to come in and be part of what I do. So again, back to connection and collaboration, there's going to be a whole lot of it. Again, I know it seems very vague and I don't want to give away too much out of the cart yet. I want people to really be surprised. I'm excited. That's all I really can say without a shadow of a doubt. I'm so stinking excited.
This is finally it. You know you're in the right place.
I do know that as hard as the decision was for me internally to get here, there's a peace that surpasses all understanding. I have it. When that happens, I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. And now the real work starts to begin because I'm now out of the boat. I got to keep my eyes on my Savior. It's not focused so much on the storms that may be crashing around me.
Well, you know, metal musicians have got a hard hit anyway, and they're used to coming up against opposition. So more power to you. That's what I got to say.
Well, thank you. Like I said, it's nervousness, but in a good way, where you sense that something awesome is about to happen, but you don't know exactly what.
You're listening to Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio. Check us out on Facebook at I'm with Mothership.
On your social media, I've noticed you and your lovely wife. I see how much y'all love each other. And what a nice family you've got. I know she's behind you all the way.
Well, I wouldn't do it if she wasn't. Once again, back to that delight yourself in me. My wife is my absolute first ministry on this earth, above all other things. If we're not in one accord, there's no reason for me to go do it. She's definitely taught me a lot of things, and make no mistake, her fingerprints are all over this project too.
Neat. I always ask, what's your favorite snacks when you're on the road?
You know, Cindy, you probably heard this before, but sometimes it's just good to be able to eat.
This is true.
I'm a bit of a health nut, and the road really kicks my butt when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. So I don't do a lot of snacking. I try to eat as intentionally as I can. If you haven't noticed from my demeanor, I'm a caffeine addict. So for me, it's not so much the food, it's the caffeine. And I like my energy drinks probably a little too much. They are sugar-free, but it is my one vice. I will freely admit that you're probably going to see me with caffeine in hand. I'm working on a sponsorship right now from Ray's Energy Drinks. So my shameless plug, I like Monster a lot, but then my favorite one was Rockstar's Mandarin Orange. Oh, my goodness. It is so amazing, especially when it's ice cold. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that sounds good. Are you doing a website?
I will be. Actually, right now I'm just I got the Instagram and the Facebook page up. Mary is writing up a bio for me, Mary Nickel.
So you've got an Instagram and you have a Facebook.
Yep.
All right.
I'm still building the site.
Okay.
And it's a little bit of a slow process. I'm trying to retrain myself a little bit and being a little bit more consistent in my presentation. I do a lot of memes and I do a lot of stuff like that, but the importance of telling the story through my social interactions is being brought to my attention. And basically the premise is I'm trying to showcase who I am, my heart, and be intentional with with how I interact on social media. Not fake, not phony, but help
memes
connect
are life, man.
I love my memes, and those won't stop. But
Right.
maybe add a little bit more things, not just something to elicit a ha-ha, but maybe something that might elicit a little bit more deeper conversation. And I guess, Cindy, it's funny you mentioned that. I guess that's a big part of the heart of my project is to give people maybe a reason to pause and be in a moment outside of everything else going on around them. I don't know if you've paid any attention to some of the events that I've done over the years with Not So Silent Night, but they were such a great event because we could all come into this place and we forget for a few hours that anything bad was going on. Yeah. And it really inspired me to continue with that mindset. I love rock concerts, make no mistake about it. Mm-hmm. I loved the intentionality of what we did with the events, and I'm hoping to bring some of that when I go out on the road again.
Cool. You are doing what God wants you to do, and God's going to bless it in a mighty way.
I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate your interest. I appreciate your support. And you have an amazing heart and amazing ministry. So even from over here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we can see it.
And vice versa. And I am just so excited that there are musicians out there like you guys that are passionate about what you do and reaching people, and that people's lives are being changed. And I'm getting glory bumps thinking about it, because that's why I do what I do, is how many people, I'm just one person, we're just one family. How many people have you guys touched and ministered to and can reach people who the church or CCM or whatever worship isn't going to reach?
Right. My hope in all this is, and I have the utmost respect for my more traditionalist family of faith, the ones that are in the CCM and like that stuff. And I've grown an appreciation for some of the elements of CCM. Mm-hmm. I always tell people I don't really have a lot of natural giftings outside of God made me a conduit. Mm-hmm. All I do is I transfer energy from one place to another.
Okay.
I remember I threw a festival called Serpent Stomp.
Oh, yeah.
And it was amazing what God did that night. But I would remember sitting there after the show, having just a moment, and God says, Jamie, are the people that came to the events valuable to me? Well, yes, Lord, they are. They are very valuable. Jamie, are the people at Church on the Move valuable to me? Well, yes, Lord, they are. Then why do you continue to cause dissension in my body? All right, I hear you. I hear you. And I was so convicted. And so for me, my prayer and my hope through this project is to take these seemingly random places and show the connection within them. And the connection is God himself, but we just may not see it because maybe our stereotypes, maybe because of our prejudices, maybe because of our history, maybe because of our situation at the moment. I'll go back to one of the best moments, most memorable moments of my time of listening to music, and I've had many, was my mom's little hippie raspy voice on an acoustic guitar singing You Are My Sunshine. It was not a metal show, wasn't even a concert. It's just my mom and a very genuine moment. Oh my God, what if we could do that? Mm-hmm. What if we could do that? And so I don't care if you got piercings. I don't care if you don't. I don't care if you go to church at the biggest church in town. I don't care if you don't. I don't care. None of that is relevant to any of what I'm about to do. My hope is that you simply see Jesus.
Amen. Well, that'll preach.
Funny how music can really soothe the soul.
Talking about the different genres and stuff. I volunteer also with Premier Productions, so I have done probably the last 5 years, maybe 6 years, I've been a runner for the XIII shows.
Yep, I've seen that.
I mean, what an honor. And I look at the faces of these 80 and 90-year-old people, and they're raising their hands, and they're worshiping.
Yep.
And I just sit in the front, kind of over to the side, and I just grinning, watching them worship. Lord's really helped me to appreciate the fact that my genre is not somebody else's genre, and what gets them to the throne is not what gets me to the throne. Mm-hmm. And that I've tried to stop bad-mouthing genres that I don't care for. But all music touches somebody, or somebody wouldn't be writing it, And you just have to have respect for what is touching people and not destroy that. I mean, I've spoken to people with the Gaithers or Casting Crowns, and they're just telling how this song ministered to them or touched their lives or changed their lives. And I'm like going, just like me, but mine's a different genre,
We're not that different.
We're not. I just need to stop all that stupid stuff.
We are one body. We are many parts. Christ is the head. My goal through my pursuits here is to work on connection from one to another. That really is the heart of the project. There you go. Well, you're a very generous soul. I love what you do. I love watching your faith in action, and I watch how passionate you are for musicianaries and your immense care, consideration, and love for what they do. So again, it's inspiring.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, y'all inspire me, and that's just a little I can give back. Maybe a little banana pudding and a hug.
Hey, banana puddings and hugs are great. You know, you obviously know sometimes we're wondering where we're going to sleep. Sometimes wondering if we're going to have a meal or if we're going to have a paycheck, and so the road life is a hard life, and
it really is.
Get somebody who has really considered not just what they see on the stage, but what a lot of people don't see when we leave that stage. It's touching. It's
something I've learned from the church. Someone needs to do this, and it's usually you.
Well, did you feel a little bit like Isaiah the Willing? Whom shall I send? And you're the only one in the room.
Here I am. Send me. That's right.
Well, I'm glad that you yourself are breaking down stereotypes. I won't forget getting back into this and just having my ill experiences with church people, if you will, kind of creep in. And then some of the best moments on the road have been at the hands of in faith, and they really softened my heart and really changed my perspective through their generosity and their care. There's just been some times where people like yourself have just left me speechless.
They're out there. That was the one thing I just didn't realize until I started doing this, is I'm not the only one doing it. I was surprised at how many people have been doing this for years, or people who've wanted to do this and didn't know how to do it.
I think that's more to the point right there. Mm-hmm. I asked this question when I would speak at my events. I challenge people with the question, what do you have and how can you give it? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't feel like something as simple as making a meal is actually God-honoring ministry. Now, I'm going to tell you, I learned that from my family. My family loves to cook for people, and they take great joy in the service. And as I watch this love in action, I just, once again, perspective changes. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people out there that have that desire, but they just simply don't think, because it's not a pastoral title or an evangelist title, that their gift is valuable in the kingdom. And so if I could tell anybody anything, stop.
Gift of hospitality. There are a lot of young people that say, I don't have any extra money. And I'm like, write a note and tell them about a particular song or an album that meant something to them and stick it in their tip jar. That's as good as money.
It'll get us down the road, I promise.
Yeah.
I got a message a while ago now, but a young lady from South Africa messaged us, and she just simply wanted to let us know how our song This Life helped her through her suicidal season. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, wow. Us,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly you.
And I didn't know that, when we were writing the song, that God was going to take it to the other side of the world and inspire somebody to keep going.
That's amazing. And that's just one that you know about. See, you don't even know all of them.
Exactly. So, yeah, send those notes in our tip jars. We love them.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I am going to let you go. We will hopefully talk to you soon.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate your time.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening tonight. Stay tuned for more great music all night long. Don't forget to check out my I'm With Mothership page on Facebook and my blog on solidrockradio.org. It has links to my guests' social accounts. This show will be replayed at 4 a.m. Eastern Time and will be added to the Solid Rock Radio website, archive, and SoundCloud. I pray you all have a wonderful week, and remember, be kind to one another.